Welcome everybody to another episode of the Pierce Brothers. Today, well, happy 4th of July weekend first before we get going too far. Great time of year to celebrate the birth of our nation and all the fun that comes along with that. So today, for today's video, we're doing most American guns or gun designs. And we've got some pretty cool guns out here. And we think that's a good topic for 4th of July, so enjoy. Throw in the comments what you think the most American gun is out there, and there's a lot of them if you start thinking about it.
There's a lot of them, but it's hard to narrow it down, but you know, obviously you can only pick 3 or 4, you know, here. Yeah. I mean, I guess there would be about 7?
Yeah, about 7-ish. So before we get started, if you'd like to support us more, make sure to like, share, subscribe. But we have our Patreon. We also have YouTube memberships. Those are great ways to support us as we try to grow. And if you need a good Kydex holster, go check out Teton Custom Holsters. The link is in our description. Use our code PierceBros to get a discount there. They make American-made, 100% American-made, lifetime guarantee. They even source all their parts in the USA, including the screws. So
keep it American.
And a lifetime warranty. So a lifetime guarantee. If that holster breaks or has any issues, they'll replace it for free. And if you live close to them, they're in East Idaho, they'll fix your holster from another company that broke. So go do that, or better yet, just buy one of their holsters and you won't have to replace a broken holster. So, all right, without further ado, Jake, first, kick us off with the coolest gun ever invented.
So my number 1 pick is the 1911. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. Been in constant production and use since 1911, and was the U.S. military sidearm from 1911 till the 1980s, and is still served on in some capacity till this day, actually. And this one is my cylinder and slide first 500, so it's a replica of the first 500 Colts ever made, and yeah. Cylinder Slide did an absolutely fantastic job with that, and
Jake will have a full video out on that particular gun in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's, if you can only pick one American gun, the 1911 could very well be that one pick, you know. So
yeah, it's probably pretty close anyway.
Yeah,
it also had 0 failures when the military tested it with the torture testing.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it was America's handgun from through some of the toughest times of the country. You know, World War I, the Punitive Expedition, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam.
Through everything.
This gun was there and kind of been through everything. So, yeah, of course, designed by John Moses Browning. Just absolutely a fantastic handgun. And of course, paired with the 45 ACP, I've never owned a 1911 in another caliber, and I don't think I ever will unless it's going to be a Super 38. Maybe sometime down the line I'll pick up one of those, but
those are fun.
No, it's just, I don't know, classic gun, classic cartridge. Hard to say too much without trying to just like overdo it, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good one. Port?
No.
Yeah, well, let's bounce over to Dad.
Yeah, no, it's me. Okay. Then Dad, then Port.
Yeah, because I only brought 1. Everyone else brought 2.
Yeah. So for my first choice, I have the AR-15, or, you know, it started off M16A1. There were a bunch of variants that kind of stemmed from there, but first real big conflict that they saw use in would have been Vietnam. You see all those pictures from Vietnam of Navy SEALs walking around in their blue jeans and their tiger stripe camo, toting an M16 or an XM177 or whatever it was, and pretty cool time in history, if you ask me. And of course, the AR-15 now is the world or USA's most popular sporting rifle, but it has a pretty deep history in the military ever since, you know, the 1960s, even the late 50s, and it's been in constant use pretty much since then. So a very proven, reliable, awesome rifles, and of course nowadays there's a million of them out there. So be careful of what company you buy from, because they're not all created equal.
Some are not very good.
Yeah, make sure you get a good one. This particular gun is a BCM. I've got a Trijicon 1-8 Credo on there. Yeah, very cool American gun. Dad?
Right there.
We got the dogs.
I'm getting attacked here.
Yeah.
She hasn't seen me for like a week, and she really misses me. This is Porter's dog, by the way.
Oh, squawk.
Yeah, you know, I chose for the rifle part. I'll do a handgun or handguns in a minute, but the rifle part, I chose the the lever action. And the reason I did that, of course, most people are going to know the history of it very well. This is a Uberti 1873. It's a replica of the Winchester model 1873, but the design goes back to Smith & Wesson and their history, and they had it in a lever action handgun, and they realized that didn't really work the best in a handgun. So ultimately it evolved into the rifle line with, and probably most familiar right off the top is the 1860 Henry. Of course, that saw use in the Civil War and so forth, and mixed in there a completely different design was, of course, the Spencer lever action, which doesn't even look like a lever action at all. Has a tubular magazine inside the stock, very short action, a side hammer, if you will. But ultimately, the 1860 Henry King patents and all that evolved into the 1866 Yellow Boy, which was the first rifle to carry the Winchester name. And it was, of course, 44 rimfire. And then the improved version came out as the Model 73 Winchester. Had a steel frame, and actually wasn't even steel, it was iron, and was chambered for a brand new cartridge, the 4440, and later added with 3840, 3220, and even 22 rimfire. So, and it was, the lever action was just absolutely uniquely American. Nothing else in other countries did anything similar to this, and I can't even begin to tell you how many millions that have been. I don't think anybody could calculate how many millions have been sold on the American market and overseas, but it was very uniquely American. Typically, they had fairly decent magazine capacity. Hold them at the shoulder while you run the action and work them. They become very popular with gunfighters, frontiersmen, hunters. You name it. Anybody needed a repeating rifle, and they were very, very important guns. And there was, what's interesting, I just mentioned the 73, because that was a very iconic, significant gun. But of course, Winchester had many designs, and Marlin and many other American companies, including Stevens, Savage, of course, they all built lever guns. They were all uniquely different, but they all built them. Here's another example. This one was Model 95 Winchester. This one is in 30 US or 3040 Craig, as most people will know it. Of course, it had a box magazine that you loaded it from the top, and the cartridges went here. It could handle spits or bullets, but it also had a ladder rear sight that allowed for long-range shooting. This particular gun is made in 1903. My grandfather, Joe Pierce, was one of the original Arizona Rangers, and this was a standard rifle for them at that time, was the 95 Winchester in 3040 Craig. Again, the lever action was very uniquely American. Nothing like a good lever gun, and today they're still incredibly popular. Not just traditional styled like the Uberti replica of the various Winchesters and so forth, but we're seeing Smith & Wesson build them. We're seeing, of course, a relatively new company. It's been around about probably 26, 27 years now, Henry Repeating Arms. And they, of course, build a variety of rimfires, center fires, huge variety of lever guns. Some of them are not traditional. They even have one out with a AR-style magazine. Of course, we've seen Marlin purchased by Ruger, and Ruger's producing some fabulous guns there. And of course, we still have the imports from Japan as well, like the BLR series, I should say. But yeah, the lever gun, again, just very uniquely American. So that's my choice today.
All right, Port. All right. Well, my choice is the Ruger Main 14. Obviously, I wanted to do an M1 Grand, but I don't have one. Because World War II, is one of the service rifle at the area. But that's kind of where the Main 14 derived from. Was the military obviously was using the M1 Grand for World War II, and after that for a while, and then they switched over to the M14. Which basically gave them, a detachable box magazine. Accuracy, I don't think you could really say one was more accurate than the other, honestly. But you know, the M1 Grand was in 30-06, and then the M14 was in, you know, 7.62 NATO, but you know, 308. Then you know, Ruger decided, hey, let's make a Mini 14, and that's where it derived from, was from the M14. But of course, it's chambered in, you know, 5.56 or 2.33.
Or 7.62 by 39.
Yeah, 7.62 by 39. Yep, they do it in that. But that's kind of my American gun that I chose. You know, that kind of derived from the M1 Grand of, you know, of old. So,
And you know, I got to inject something for you, Port. The Mini 14 gets a bad rap for being inaccurate, and we did a video on that talking about barrel twist rates. We did a campfire on it, I think, and then also Porter did some long range shooting out at 600 or 700 yards. I don't remember, but
750 on the one.
But you get these later ones with the faster twist barrels. They're more accurate than the old ones that came out in the mid 70s. Substantially more accurate. Of course, they're scopable. The ones back then did not have that. That, of course, came along with the ranch rifle.
Yeah.
But anyway, I didn't mean to.
Well, no, it's
just getting
it's
that
all viable
in there.
points. You know that, you know, it's still a good rifle, but you know, that's kind of the thought process behind why I chose the Mini 14, was, you know, that it derived from that World War II era rifle, the M1 Grand, and I think that's a pretty American, you know, standby, as you know, as you'd call it. Kind of a little out of date nowadays, but not really necessarily fully. So
I don't know. Ruger sells all the Mini 14s they can make.
Yeah, they need to make they need to make like a Mini 30. Oh, I mean, they do the Mini 30, but they need to do a Mini 14 in 308. I know they probably have the
an M1A.
Yeah,
they actually have done that, but it's just shelved. They haven't.
Yeah. Well, they need to get rid of the slam fire issue.
Springfield does the M1A, and there's a few people that do M1A, but
if Ruger would do it, and if they would get rid of like the slam fire issue that they all have, and just a couple other things like that, I think they'd sell the heck out of them, and then cheapen them up from those other companies a little bit. I'd buy one. So.
Yep. All right, Jake, your next pick.
My next pick would be the Winchester 1897, and this can kind of be a stand-in for any of the combat shotguns America used. But the combat shotgun was really kind of an American
idea.
Yeah, kind of an American idea, the modern combat shotgun, I should say, because before that, you know, there was blunderbusses used, black powder, single shot things that they'd use, kind of like a shotgun.
But not
yeah, but like, so I think it was in the Philippines, there was a few hundred Winchester 97 shotguns ordered with short barrels like this, 20-inch barrels, to help put down the insurrection in the Philippines, as they called it. And so that was kind of like the beginnings of the American combat shotgun. And of course, some were used in the punitive expedition. They gained widespread use, and I shouldn't say widespread, but quite a few used in World War I. And of course, those were the trench gun configuration. So they added a heat shield, bayonet lug, and so you
made
can fit
it more combat worthy.
Yeah, I guess. So you can, you know, stab people and shoot them. And so the 97 was probably one of the more heavily used. But the Model 12 Winchester was also used quite a bit. Remington Model 10 was used in World War I. Stevens, there's a few of the Stevens models, like the 520 and the 620, I believe, were used in World War II. And in World War II, the trench gun was used pretty extensively in every theater of the war, especially in the Pacific. They saw quite a bit of use there. Vietnam, they saw a lot of use in Vietnam as well. So, again, a lot of the combat distances, especially in the jungle, really close, and the shotgun's really effective at those ranges. And
yeah, you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know that when those were first introduced, the troops were literally screaming for more shotguns that were in the trenches.
Yeah,
they were like, give us more shotguns, more shotguns. They loved them for that trench work.
Yeah. So I mean, there for quite a few decades, the shotgun was kind of an American combat arm. It was kind of in their staple of combat arms that we used and issued to our troops, and it hasn't been until fairly recent times that other countries have started using the shotguns, and in fairly limited numbers. But even to this day, shotguns are still found in U.S. arsenals. You know, pump actions and autoloaders both, and Yeah, I think they're using Mossbergs now for the most part,
Yeah.
and some Benellis, I think. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's my pick for my second one. One honorable mention, I would say, is the Thompson submachine gun.
That's a good one.
Uh, most countries, when they went to a submachine gun, were using 9mm or smaller calibers. America was like, well, we want 45, and so they, I don't know, just interesting in that regard. So
Yep.
American submachine guns in general were 45 ACP with the Thompson, the M3 grease gun. So we had, I think in Vietnam we used kind of a few different models from Sweden and stuff, but yeah. So anyways, those are my picks.
All right.
All right, my second pick is the old Smith & Wesson double action revolver. They've been making revolvers for quite some time. We got a couple of pretty cool ones here. We've got a 44 Special triple lock, a 1917. Of course, the 1917 saw a lot of use in military in World War I, all the way up through World War II. And then the triple lock is just cool and classy. And then we've got a registered Magnum here, the first ever 357. And all the way up to modern day, we have a modern model 19 here, also in 357. So just really cool. A lot of history in double action Smith & Wesson revolvers. And yeah, I mean, they've been a staple in America for a long, long time now. So they're still making lots of revolvers today. Yeah, I mean, enough said. We got a lot of videos out on them. Dad's done quite a few on historic Smith & Wessons and that. So go check some of those out.
Like our revolvers.
Yeah, the pre-29, the registered Magnum. Jake did one a while back on the end frame, the early end frames.
Yeah, I need to,
Pre-war end frames.
need to redo that video.
Yeah, we'll
but-
redo that and make it better at some point. That was
Yeah.
early on when we
Yeah,
were
that was
the
like
first
originals.
videos. Yeah,
Yeah.
like our early.
We were still trying to figure shit out.
Yeah, we didn't. Well, we didn't know how to edit really, and we didn't know how to film well. And anyways, there's just a lot of potential to make that video better. So, but yeah, Smith & Wesson revolvers, really American to the core. So,
Well, they're a quality gun, and other countries have used them, especially during World War II. A bunch of them were sent to England.
Yeah.
Even before that, the Russians used a bunch in the 1870s and 1880s. But they're just a quality American revolver. That's something Americans have excelled at, is making a quality revolver.
Yeah.
So,
I think Dad's gonna hit on another real quality American revolver here. So,
Yeah.
probably you could argue this is probably one of the most American designs out there.
Yeah. You know, here I've got a Colt single action. This one was made in 1875.
Port's dog's over here trying to steal the show. She keeps going from
She's
person
doing
to
it.
person.
Here.
Hey, come on, pet me.
I have a dog out of her. We're going to do a video on her and him one of these days. Anyway, so this is an 1875 era Colt single action, so it's an early gun. And these are generally referred to as the early modern firearms. So they were a cartridge gun, and they had huge influence on the direction that modern firearms went at that point, and they were early modern firearms. But interestingly, the military put these through some really rigorous testing, and the military also held Colt to an extremely high level of quality. Their inspectors inspected the military guns beyond belief, and they rejected guns that way better quality than anything you buy brand new, actually, just that, to put that simple. But the military actually got 3-inch groups of these at 100 yards, and they would actually train their troops to lay their horses down and practice out at distances of 400 and 500 yards. And in the point being that they could keep an enemy at bay at that distance with a 6-gun. So, of course, this was the military configuration here, and they eventually, this gun was made in 1880. They started going with shorter barrels. I joke and call this my Bat Masterson gun, 4 3/4 inch nickel 45, and you got to purchase stocks with the Eagle and so forth. And I joke at that because this became a standard with gunfighters, cowboys, lawmen, outlaws alike, everybody. Very convenient to handle, and yet it still had the power of the 45 Colt cartridge. And by 1880, in fact, that was the earliest reference I've ever found on the 40 grain powder charge with a 250 grain bullet. And that was by UMC, which evolved into Remington, of course. And that was a very potent load. I've actually chronographed and tested early ammunition. It was doing well over 1,000 feet per second from a 7.5 inch gun. Very much a magnum of its day. But the point with these is that, of course, the single action revolver, such as the Colt, no other foreign countries ever come close to building anything like this except as a copy in modern times. And then, of course, that set the stage for what was expected from revolver makers in America. And, you know, Joe touched on the vintage Smiths. I brought along here a early 5-screw pre-model 29 44 Magnum Smith & Wesson. Again, this was a very high quality firearm, accurate, reliable. You know, I'm often asked about Korths and some other designs, and I'm sorry, I've had and owned and shot Korths extensively, and they don't hold a candle to a quality American double-action revolver such as the Smith & Wesson. A friend of mine that passed away here a few years ago was actually a good friend with Kent Lamont, or with Elmer Keith. His name was Kent Lamont. He actually took a Smith Model 29 44 Magnum, and he scoped it up, and using the Elmer Keith cast bullet Lyman number 429421, he was able to get sub 1 inch groups at 100 yards with it. Let me repeat that. He was getting sub 1 inch groups at 100 yards. And so is minute of angle accuracy. There's a lot of rifles that won't do that. And so, you know, the Americans really have the revolver figured out. They produce a remarkable gun. The best in the world. There's no other way to say it. Simply the best in the world. There's other companies like Ruger. Of course, Bill Ruger started with single action revolvers in 1953. Of course, he'd done his 22 auto prior to that in 1949, the standard auto as he called it. But by 1953, he launched a line of single action revolvers that, man, they're a world standard today. They're tough, they're reliable, they're available at a working man's price. And this one happens to be an old model of 3 screws, we call them. So it works in a traditional, like the Colt single action, and it's of course 45 Colt. Americans, they've done it better than any other country in the revolver world. And so, in my opinion, revolvers are uniquely American. So they, incidentally, in a lot of countries, the word Colt or revolver are interchangeable. So if you say Colt, it means revolver. If you say revolver, it means Colt. So the translation is, so to speak. So there you have it. We Americans love our revolvers, and we still do. There's many great ones out. Ruger's got some fabulous double-action revolvers. Of course, Ruger, Smith & Wesson, and Colt have all had to modernize in their manufacturing to be able to make guns where the cost of labor and inflation and so forth keeps them within check. But I keep telling people it's remarkable the value we get in guns that are made in America. It really is. I have behind the scenes knowledge of the expenses associated with manufacturing costs, the taxes they pay, of course, laborers and labor unions in some cases, and of course insurance. Insurance is a killer. But when you calculate all that in, it's really hard for them to compete with some gun being made in Brazil or something, and yet they do. And it's remarkable. My hat's really off to the American manufacturer. So, but those are some thoughts on a uniquely American gun. Is the revolver in general. So.
Port, your dogs stink.
She stinks like
she needs a bath.
Yeah, she's pretty bad. She gets kind of rank.
Anyways, happy Independence Day, guys. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned this weekend. We've got 3 good videos. So tomorrow morning we'll drop the patriotic stories or patriotic things that we enjoy, and then on Sunday we will have our barbecue guns video dropping. So yeah, happy 4th of July, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.